All right, guys, buckle up. It's the holidays, and we are gonna do something super special. Full disclosure, I am not a French pastry chef, so I have just done this for the first time, very recently. So I've tried to troubleshoot as much as I can to help you guys, but we are gonna make croissant bread pudding. Not only are we making croissant bread pudding, we are making the croissants to go in the bread pudding. It sounds daunting, it sounds like a lot. It's only 7 ingredients, 8 if you count the butter in the middle. It's gonna take a day or two. Set yourself aside the time and make something truly amazing for your family for Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate. It's gonna be unbelievable. And I promise you I'm gonna hold your hand the whole way through, but today, we're making croissants, which is a laminated yeasted dough, which sounds very scary, but I promise you will be okay. When I started thinking about recipes for this season, I was thinking about Christmas, and Christmas to me is chocolate and orange. So our final product is gonna be a croissant chocolate and orange bread pudding. Makes me think of my dad, makes me think of those like chocolates that are shaped like an orange, that taste like an orange, that we eat every Christmas. So I come to Mr. Marie and I say, what do you think about this? We can use store-bought croissants or frozen dough. And he was like, what? And I'm like, what? And he was like, it's Christmas. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, you make croissants. And I'm over here like, we're gonna soak it in cream. It's not gonna matter. And he's all like, are you scared? And I'm like, yeah. So I have taken myself to croissant school. I would love right now to just do a really quick shout out to Claire Saffitz. This is actually her recipe from the New York Times. I did not modify the recipe because I was scared to death. But I was a professional pastry chef, did not make croissants obviously, but I'm a home trained baker. So I'm gonna take you guys through it as a home trained baker, working with someone who is absolutely amazing at pastry, using their recipe. We're gonna do this together, and then I'm gonna give you my recipe for bread pudding. Again, shout out to Claire Saffitz in the New York Times, because this is her croissant recipe. I am so grateful for you. Please give me a call. Please do Betty Bakes. I love your hair. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to make the dough. If you have never made croissants before, it's what's called a laminated dough. We're gonna make layers of dough, butter. But in order to do that, we need the dough. So that's what we're gonna make first. I have got my trusty new friend. My mixer, Snow White, unfortunately, has stopped working the day before we were filming. So I ran to the store and met my new best friend, Steely Dan. We will spell it out because we don't want to be sued, but Steely Dan. And so far in the day and a half I've known him, he has become very special to me. He's just kind of wonderful. He has a stir function that Snow White did not have, so that's kind of nice. But yes, this is Steely Dan, my new best friend and left-hand man. Dough. This is gonna sound like a bread dough because it kind of is. It's a yeasted dough. So we wanna make sure that we start with a really strong flour. We wanna get a gluten in it, which creates the elasticity that we need to do the lamination with the butter. I just go to the store, look for bread flour, but what we want is a high protein flour, go buy bread flour. End of conversation. So I have got here 4 2/3 cup of flour. We have got 1/3 cup of sugar. We've got 1 tablespoon plus a 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. I use Diamond kosher salt. If you're using table salt, use about 1/2 of that. We don't want the yeast and salt to touch because the salt can retard the yeast. So we're gonna put the salt on this side. Now we're going to add 2 1/4 teaspoon of yeast, and that's gonna go on the other side. And we are going to use the bread hook attachment. That's the one that looks like this. It came with your mixer, you didn't know what to do with it. This is what it's bread. Gonna pop that on up. Lift that.
What?
That's my robot noise, I guess. Just start stirring. See how slow he goes? So I'm going to take this up to 2. In the meantime, we have got room temperature 3/4 cup of water and a 1/2 cup of whole milk. We're just gonna make this one a little mixture. As the mixer is going, we're just gonna pour it right in the middle. You can do it all at one time. We're not being delicate here. And what the mixer is gonna do is it's slowly gonna mix all of this together until it's one dough that's cohesive and nice and tight. Every time it goes around, it's bringing more flour in. That's exactly what we want it to do. We want it to just kind of create a well and mix all of this in. We're gonna mix it for about 5 minutes till it is a very nice tight dough and all of the flour is incorporated. So it's starting to mix in. It's a nice shaggy dough, which means it's not a full ball yet. So I'm gonna set the timer for 5 minutes and just let it work. I still have it at a 3, I'm not taking it any higher than that, but we'll slowly watch the dough come together. It's become a nice little unsticky ball. Now we're just kneading it for a few more minutes till the timer goes off. Creating gluten, that's gonna be that stretchy stuff we need. Gluten creates the elasticity, and we will need a lot of that. I'm actually gonna call that. We still have a minute left, but I want to call it because we have become this nice shaggy, not sticky dough. As you can see, it's still breaking. It's not gonna pass what everyone calls the window pane test. We still need to develop some gluten, but we want this to rest for a few minutes before we add the butter. So we're gonna put this in here, put a tea towel over it, and we're gonna let it set for 10 minutes. In the meantime, take 1/4 cup or a 1/2 stick of butter, cut it in, let me show you what I did. I just cut it to about this size, maybe about 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch. Take your cold butter, cut it up, pop this in the fridge. And then wait 10 minutes. It's funny because like when I'm baking, 10 minutes is not long at all because I have like other things I need to be doing. But when you're filming, 10 minutes is like 800 days. We just now are at 9 minutes. We're gonna be around for a while. So our dough's rested for 10 minutes. We are going to uncover. And grab our butter from the fridge. Again, 1/4 cup, 1/2 stick, cut into little cubes. We're gonna turn steely onto 3, and we're just gonna pop these in. Don't get fancy, doesn't matter. It's all gonna be figured out in the end. You see how the butter is all sticking to the sides and this looks like it's never gonna mix? Let it go for another 5 minutes. By the end, this is gonna be an almost perfectly clean bowl, I promise you. So that's been 5 minutes, and I just wanna do a quick update for you. So now this dough is a nice little ball. It's not breaking as easily. We're getting a ball out of this, and it's not sticky at all. So we've started developing that gluten. All of the butter is incorporated. We're gonna knead it for another 3 minutes just to get the remaining gluten, and then we are going to let it rest. So I'm gonna put it in for another 3 minutes. All right, our additional 3 minutes are up. You can knead it up to 10 minutes. I just chose 8 because it's doing what I want it to do. Look at how smooth this is. Remember how it was just breaking? Now it's just this beautiful, smooth dough. I'm gonna knead it just a little bit. You really don't have to, but I actually really like the feel of it. And you're gonna put it in a ball. One of the things I love about making dough is when it becomes this gorgeous smooth ball. We just threw flour and water in here, and now we've got this beautiful, smooth, just gorgeous ball of dough. Just nice and smooth, feels nice to the touch. We are gonna let this rise. It's got all the yeast in there. The yeast has plenty of food in way of the sugar and the milk and the flour. So we are gonna let this rise, but what we want to do, and this is again, another trick I learned from Claire, we are going to be taking this and turning it into a rectangle. I'm gonna grab a knife. If I can find my knife. And I'm gonna make an X on the top. Take the knife and cut an X on the top. And then see how it does this? As that rises, this is going to expand into a square or a rectangle. We can use the same bowl. We don't need to dirty another bowl. Put that in cut side up. We're gonna wrap it with plastic wrap. It's gonna rise for 1 hour at room temperature. Then we're gonna move it to the fridge for at least 4 hours to overnight. Don't show my ugly plastic wrap. I'm a professional kitchen. I have big professional ugly plastic wrap. One of the reasons you want to use plastic wrap or a damp towel, I find plastic wrap is a little more efficient, is because if air gets to the dough, it's going to create a skin on the dough, which doesn't allow the dough to rise. It'll just stay in that skin. So like I said, we're gonna rest this room temperature for 1 hour. Then we are going to move it to the fridge, which is what's called a long ferment, but it will very slowly be rising. We've got the yeast kind of calmed down with the cold, but it's also gonna create a lot of flavor. If we just straight up did this after it rises for an hour, it's not gonna have the depth of flavor that you think about with a croissant. And I know when you think about a croissant, you're thinking, oh, buttery, flaky, whatever, but this gives it that really deep flavor that I promise you need. But what we're gonna do before that is I'm gonna show you how to make the butter block. This is one of the most intimidating parts for me. This was the part that I was scared to death to do, is make the butter block and laminate. But I'm gonna show you how we do it, and it's not hard. So I'm gonna set this aside and meet you back here, and we're gonna beat some butter. We have 3 sticks of butter, 2 pieces of parchment paper, 1 on top, 1 on bottom. And our first goal is to just start softening the butter. I have 2 rolling pins. This is my favorite one for hitting the butter just because it's easier to handle. This was my husband's grandma's broomstick. You're just gonna beat it until it's pliable, and then we're gonna move on to the next step. So it's gonna be a little loud, I'm sorry. All right. As you can see, it's starting to flatten out, and it's starting to already become pliable. I'm gonna put the parchment right back on it. We're gonna flip it completely upside down, do the same thing with the other side.
Hey, can you play Hopper Teacher?
That's probably right. So now I'm gonna ask you to do something a little scary. We're gonna get a ruler. I don't care for using rulers normally. Like I said, I'm a home baker, but using a ruler at this stage is going to help us a lot on the next stage. What you want to do is we're eventually gonna make this butter block an 8" by 8" square. So I'm gonna go ahead and check. We are at 6.5 by about 4.5. So we can continue to see where it goes. Let's try to roll it and see if it's starting to roll with us. Yep, we're rolling. I'm trying to get one of the sides to be 8 inches. And at this point, you can push the butter together. It doesn't matter. We just want to hit 8 inches. All right, so our long side is at 8 inches. So we turn it. I don't know what, if you turn it from this to this, what's that?
90 degrees.
90 degrees. And we're gonna roll it up till it's fairly close to 8 inches. We're not caring if it's a square right now. We don't care what shape it is. We just want these 4 points to be 8 inches apart. I pull a ruler out and my brain goes, So at this point, this no longer serves me. It's a little too light because it is just a broomstick. I'm gonna pull out the big dog. This is a marble rolling pin, and it allows to add weight without me having to add a bunch of pressure. So it adds the weight for me, and I just have to roll it back and forth. In our rolling, the way that it's smushed, this is now 9 inches. We just want it at 8 inches. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my pastry cutter, and we are literally just gonna cut this, and just put it right on top, because this is all gonna go together anyway. We just wanna try to keep it in a square. And see how pliable it is? So let's check this. That should be good. It's a little under, so as we're rolling it, it's gonna even out. Let's check the other side. We've got about 1.5 inches left, okay? All right, we are at 8 inches by 9 inches. That's okay, we're just gonna cut this off at 8. So you see how it's not a perfect square? What we just cut off, we're just gonna pop onto here to finish off our square. We can fold over the parchment to make an 8" by 8" square, because we know that the longest parts on each side of the square is 8 inches. I like to use tape. You don't have to use tape. I just find it a little bit more reliable. It keeps the square a square. So this is what you're gonna end up with. See how it's an 8" by 8" square, but this is all empty, this is all empty, this is all empty. What we're gonna do next is fill those in. Our butter is still cold, which is important, but pliable. So since you've got an open back, pop that right back on the piece of parchment you were just using. We're going to use the tension of the parchment paper to fill out the square. So see, we've got our square right here. This corner's empty, this corner's empty. We're just gonna take the rolling pin and roll, and it's gonna take that pliable butter all the way down and fill that square in, and there's a corner. You're gonna do it for all 4 corners. That also helps ensure that everything is as even as it can be. The result is you have a perfectly level, perfectly square, or pretty close, 8" by 8" butter block. Ta-da! We're gonna put this in the fridge. It's gonna firm up while the dough is finishing rising, and then we're gonna put it all together. But of course, through the magic of television, I have had this dough resting overnight. So I'm gonna show you, let's save the plastic wrap. You remember how we did the X? That's helping us already get started on a square rectangle shape. So we're gonna take this, pop it right on the board, move our bowl to someplace. We don't have a lot of room. What we're gonna do with this dough is we are going to work it between 8 to 9 inches wide, but we wanna try to get like 18 inches long. The first thing, we're just gonna knock it out with our hands because it's very cold. I've had it sitting in there overnight, so this is very cold dough. If you need to let it come to more room temperature to get it to stretch, that's absolutely fine. We are just gonna start rolling it out. It's gonna take more time and more muscle strength than you think it will, but we wanna try to keep as rectangle-y of a shape as we can. That looks about right. If you want to at this time, you can absolutely trim the edges and make it a really beautiful rectangle. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna keep it pretty rustic because this is gonna go in bread pudding. My family's gonna eat the croissants and love them. And the croissants we don't eat are going in a bread pudding, so I'm not stressed about keeping it an exact rectangle. I'm gonna pop it on a sheet pan. This is a half sheet pan. We're gonna put this in the freezer to get it super cold because our butter is super cold. You can do it up to 20 minutes. I usually do about 15 because I keep my freezer really, really cold because of all the baked goods that are in it. You just want it to be fully cool to the touch. So pop that in the freezer. Set a timer for 15 to 20 minutes, and I'll see you then, and we will laminate the dough and get the butter in the dough. That's the fun part. It's all the fun part. I actually really am kind of loving this process. I just can't wait till I perfect it, you know? So I will see you in 14 minutes and 43 seconds. We let everything chill. We've got the dough that was chilling in the freezer for 15 to 20 minutes. We have got our butter block, which was cooled overnight, or at least 4 hours. I've got these sitting at room temperature because if we put the butter in right now, it doesn't bend. It will break, and when we start folding, that's gonna be an issue. So that's just gonna be at room temperature. Set it right over here. Our dough is really cold, but still pliable. We're gonna just pop that on our workbench here, save our plastic wrap. I feel like I'm of a generation that, like, we had the hole in the ozone. We had Save the Ducks. Like, it's ingrained in me that, like, if it's disposable, I need to be wary. So, save your plastic wrap. I'm just gonna do a real quick roll out. It's already pretty much to the length that we want because we made sure of that. But it also just warms it up just a little bit. So it's nice and cool to the touch, but it's pliable. We can stretch it if we need to. So the easiest way to make sure that your dough is going to envelop your butter is to take the butter off that second piece of parchment and put it in your dough. As you can see, we've got the length that we need because we can always stretch this to match, but we're gonna need a little more width. So it's a good thing we checked this, and we're gonna flip this over and get a little bit more width. And it should just easily roll. This feels like you're rolling a lot. You are. As you can see, the butter will bend, but not break. So we are going to take our masking tape. Now you're just gonna plop this right in the middle and peel off the parchment. So we wanna envelop the butter in the dough. We want them to meet and combine. And if you have to stretch it a little bit, that's okay too. You wanna make this as tight as possible. You don't want anything sticking out. Once you've got it like this, let's fold it over. And then you're gonna pinch the sides and just pinch them together right at the butter block. Now I'm gonna trim off just a little bit of that excess. Not too much because we don't want to expose the butter. Same over here. We're going to turn it perpendicular. So the seam is now this way. You don't want to really widen it, but we do want to lengthen it. And this is a trick that I very recently learned. If you are trying to keep something square or a rectangle, work in the middle to the corner. So instead of rolling up or down, go this way. So yeah, we're keeping it pretty close to the same width, but we're working to make it really long. It's gonna take a little longer than you think it will, but just keep checking that temperature. As long as everything is staying cool, you're good. So I'm gonna show you where I am right now, and I'm gonna show you what we call the first turn. When you're thinking about croissants and laminated dough, we're thinking about layers, right? We want to see layers. We've got the dough, we've got the butter, we're gonna create extra layers right now. You're gonna take the bottom side, fold it up to the middle, press it lightly. Same with the top side, press it lightly, and then press them over themselves. This is called a book turn, you just made a book. I'm gonna do just a little bit of light, just pressure, just to start getting these to bind together. Now we're gonna chill it. We want to chill that butter. We want that butter to be as cold as it can be. Make sure it is airtight. You're gonna put this in the freezer for 15 minutes to stop all the yeast, then it's gonna rest in the refrigerator for an hour. We're gonna meet back here, we're gonna do what's called the second turn, then we're gonna let it rest overnight. So we're gonna take our dough and we're gonna do exactly the same thing we just did. It's nice and chilled. Put a little bit of flour, pat that off. A little bit of flour, pat that off. One of the things I like to do is to go in and press. This is straight from the fridge, so it is still very cold. So you can get away with this right now. It kind of presses it into itself and starts our elongating process. And because this was a broom handle, you can see the wood grain. It's not necessary, you can start rolling right away. I just like to kind of give it a jump start. We want it to be roughly, probably about 18 inches long. The thinner it gets, these layers are just gonna get thinner and thinner and thinner, and then we're gonna make more layers on top of it. So I'm not really rolling with like a lot of pressure, but the weight of the marble pen is what's moving the dough for us. If you're gentle, you can manipulate it slightly, but I say don't risk it. We've worked to make these beautiful layers. We've laminated dough for the first time. Leave it alone. So where I'm at, I'm starting to get a little resistance where it's snapping back into place. So I'm gonna go to my lighter rolling pin. So I'm just using a little bit more pressure. We don't want to use too much pressure because we don't want to break this dough. But if it starts giving you resistance this way, try rolling it this way.
You know what you're giving me tonight? Aerith from Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Yeah.
Is that a compliment?
The red and the pink, yeah. She's like the big heroine of the story.
Is she hot?
I don't want to answer those questions.
Am I hot?
Yes, absolutely.
That's what I needed to hear. So I think we're about the length I want. You can work and get it thinner than this. The thinner you get those layers, the better your pastry is gonna be. But I'm not overly concerned with that. I am concerned with making a croissant. I'm gonna do the exact same turn. Some people do an envelope turn at this point, but I'm really intrigued with getting as many layers as I can in here. So I'm gonna do the same turn we did earlier. I'm gonna fold and fold on top of itself. I'm gonna do the same pressing down motion. That's it, you've got your little book. It is going to rest and rise again overnight, and then tomorrow morning we will roll, shape, and bake. So I will see you after I get a good night's sleep. A well-deserved good night's sleep. Good morning. We have got this beautiful, look at how much this has risen. It's just super fat and beautiful and gorgeous. It was gone. It was gone before it was there.
It's okay, we'll wait for you.
We are going to roll it out, shape it, and let it rise for one more rise, then we're gonna bake them. So we've got it about to the right length. It's still cold. Let's get this puppy cut up. If you can find these online, these things are amazing because they give you exactly equal parts of what you want to cut. We want to cut this long end into 4 sections. I'm just gonna trim it with my pastry cutter first. Look at all these layers we did of dough, butter, dough, butter. That's what's gonna give you your fluff in your croissant. Gonna stretch this out to 1, 2, 3, 4. Pop an end on each side, and you magically have exactly the same size. I am just taking my handy pastry cutter and cutting exactly where we just put those lines, just to make sure it's going all the way through all those butter layers. Each one of these is gonna make 2 croissants. So you're literally just going to very easily put ruler to ruler. It's like I'm a nun.
Shout out nuns.
Shout out nuns. So we're just gonna cut it diagonally into 2 triangles. They're not perfect, that's fine. We're just gonna do a quick roll, make it a little thinner, and you're gonna take the edges of your triangle and squish them out. You're going for about 3 inches, then we're gonna roll them. I'm not pushing this very hard, I'm just making sure it's a tight roll and just letting it do what it wants to do. Roll this baby out, take this far end, stretch it out, start it rolling up. One of the tricks I learned is once you get to the tail, push on it so that the tail sticks. Look at all those layers. Look at those layers you made. I'm just gonna continue that with all 8. We are going to put 4 on each sheet pan, loosely wrap it with plastic wrap. They're gonna rise for 2.5 hours, and then I'll meet you back here. We're gonna egg wash them and bake them. So we're gonna take 1 egg, but we only need the yolk. So save the egg white for your husband for his omelet tomorrow. And as you've seen before, maybe on my tips and tricks, the fastest way to get an egg yolk out is to literally gloved hands, scoop it out, just let all the white fall through. Just pass it between your hands, get all the white off, and boom, egg yolk. You don't have to take time to just throw it back and forth. That's done. To this 1 egg yolk, we're gonna add about a tablespoon of heavy cream. So it's about half yolk, half heavy cream. And you can eyeball it. But what I do want you to do is mix it until there's no streaks of yellow. We want it all one continuous color. So one thing I wanna show you is where you've built up those layers, we don't wanna cover that with egg wash because that's going to prevent the layers from puffing up. So we're gonna use the egg wash on all the flat surfaces of the croissant, only on the flat surfaces. While these are rising, you should have preheated your oven to 375. Some things never change. So we're gonna put these in a preheated oven at 375 for 20 minutes. The 20 minutes is gonna give it all the time we need for it to inflate. Then we are going to rotate it and cook it for another 10 minutes so that it can get the brownness that we want. We will try the final product, and then I'm gonna show you how to make bread pudding out of this. Oh, the oven's over here. You guys, there is a word in the British language that means that you are very excited and very happy, and it's called chuffed. And I am chuffed as hell about these croissants. Look at these. I didn't buy these from a French bakery. We made them from scratch on camera. Look at these things. They're freaking gorgeous. They're stunning. Sorry guys, I have to take a couple pictures for my mom. I'm so proud. This is what makes me so happy is I was never classically trained, but look at this. It's got all that. This looks like I bought it from a bakery. You guys have to do this. I'm so chuffed. Look at that. Look at all these pockets. This is exactly what we were doing with the lamination, is making all these beautiful, airy, light pockets. So every time you see a little hole, that's the butter that was between the dough that's evaporated. Look at that cross section. Let's try these real fast. I made croissants.
You sure did.
So I'm gonna grab one of these croissants and set it aside because now I'm gonna teach you how to make bread pudding. Move this out of the way.
Oh, let me just grab
Don't eat these, don't. Half my croissants will be gone by the time I film this.
Probably.
Bread pudding is this decadent custard with this delicious bread. It's very Southern. It is something that comes out very unctuous and it feels luxurious, but it's not that hard to make. So I wanna walk you through that today. When you buy croissants or when you make croissants, they're good for like 12 hours maybe. They go downhill pretty fast, which makes them the perfect conduit for bread pudding. If you have fresh croissants, you just made fresh croissants, eat your fresh croissants, and then make bread pudding with the delicious leftovers that you have. You can use brioche, you can use white bread, you can use Italian bread, you can use any bread that you can think of. Just have it a little stale, and then we're gonna toast it off. So let me show you with this gorgeous croissant that I made. Let's ruin it. Yeah! So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take these croissants. Ideally, they are not fresh baked, they are a day old. And we are gonna just cut it into cubes. Like I said, any bread that you have is gonna work great. Oh, those are layers, yeah, it's gorgeous. And now you just roughly tear it into cubes. So you're gonna toast it at 350 for between 15 to 20 minutes, depending on your oven. And what you're gonna get are these beautiful crusty bread cubes. Now it's just kind of like a crouton.
Come in.
So I've taken 12 croissants. I have cut them into as big or as little cubes as you'd like. You don't have to toast it, but I prefer the flavor if you toast it and then let it set in the custard overnight. And I'm gonna tell you something really great about this custard. So custard is basically, custard when we're discussing bread pudding, is basically the glue that holds everything together. It's very egg rich, so it almost rises like a souffle in the oven and then falls back down. It gives you this really beautiful mess. You can flavor this any way you want. I am making this bread pudding in honor of my dad. He loves a chocolate orange. That beautiful little foil wrapped chocolate orange that we always bought at Christmas time. The first thing you do is we have 7 eggs. That sounds like a lot of eggs, but we are doing a 9 by 13 casserole pan. We are going to add to these 7 eggs, 2 cups of whole milk and 2 cups of heavy cream. Try not to splash it all over yourself. The last thing we're gonna add to make our custard mix is a 1/2 cup of sugar. So it's a 1/2 cup. I prefer granulated sugar for this recipe just because brown sugar can sometimes add a molasses, which is a deep flavor, but I will be using dark chocolate chips, so I don't want those to compete against each other. I wanna keep it light and fresh with the orange and let the chocolate be the deep flavor. So for this recipe, I specifically use granulated sugar. That's the whole custard. I'm gonna break up those eggs, and then as I start whisking it, you're gonna see the eggs come to the top, and it's gonna become kind of uniform in color, that beautiful light yellow color from all the egg yolks. This is the time to add all your flavorings. Add some cinnamon, add some nutmeg. I really love like an allspice. I've done Chinese 5 spice, which is really good. Whatever you want, you can add it right now. Obviously we have an orange, and I'm gonna use a microplane and just zest this orange directly into my custard. Now, pro tip about zesting, this is as far as you wanna go. If you go any deeper than this, it's gonna look white, and that's the sour part. So anytime you're zesting, it's going to look like you've left a solid color there. That's fine, that's what you wanna do. When we think about flavor on citrus, oranges, lemons, limes, the skin is what holds the oils. You're gonna get orange flavor if all you use is the juice, but you're gonna get the most impact by making sure you get that skin too. It's just pure orange flavor, it's delicious. I don't have a cute little juicer for oranges. I have a cute juicer for limes or lemons, but it's too small. So I go with the hands approach. This one doesn't seem to have any seats, so I can just squeeze with abandon. And I just pour that right on top of our croissant croutons. I like to do a really quick press down. And as this absorbs everything, it's going to get nice and mushy, which is what we want. If you're letting this set overnight, usually what I do is I'll do this in late afternoon, maybe while I'm making dinner. And then I will go in and turn it and just use a spoon and make sure all of these crusty bits on top go on the bottom, and then put it back in the fridge overnight. I use a little plastic wrap, if it lets me. I'm gonna pop this in the fridge overnight, but I do have a swap out so I can show you the texture that I'm looking for. Yeah. So much has been absorbed, there's not a lot left in here. And when you press down, it's all squishy. And croissants absorb so much of the custard. So I have a 9 by 13 baking dish. We've let this set at least an hour to overnight. I have a little butter here. This is not a necessary step, but I like to do it because it makes my job easier later. Melted, room temperature, it doesn't matter, just super thin. It's like using a baking spray, which you can use a baking spray. You don't have to stress about butter. Just pop it on in, I don't care. Use whatever you want. Don't even look at it. Just stare right in the camera. Put some butter on it, put some spray on it, it doesn't matter. Here's where we're gonna add our final flavoring. We're eyeballing it. We're done with rulers, we used math, we used all kinds of things to make the croissants. Now it's down home cooking. We're gonna use about half of this into the pan. We're gonna pop it right in. Liquid, everything. Dark chocolate chips, sprinkle very, very generously. Pour the rest on top. All I'm doing now is using the spatula to kind of even out the top layer. Even it out till your heart says stop.
Stop.
And you're good to go. Our remaining chocolate pieces, we're just gonna sprinkle them on top. And then I've got a 1/4 cup or a half That came upon me unaware. A 1/4 cup or a 1/2 stick of butter. It's just room temperature in pieces. All you want to do is just dot it. It doesn't matter. Just throw it on there. Now you wash your hands because you got goopy butter all over it. That's our whole bread pudding. You can take 4 days to make this. You can take 2 days to make this. You can buy store-bought bread and take overnight to make this. This is the most bang for your buck. This is a dessert that will wow everyone. Make it a breakfast one, put some maple syrup in it. Like, this will wow everybody you serve it to. We've made it, it's done. I'm gonna put parchment on top of this so as the chocolate melts, it doesn't stick to anything. And I buy my parchment pre-sheeted. If yours is in a roll and it's all rolled up once you tear it off, all you have to do is crinkle it up. It will get rid of the roll in the middle. It'll straighten right out. And you will no longer have that roll that's annoying. Pro tip, press it down, and I'm gonna cover it with aluminum foil. Basically what I'm doing is I'm taking the aluminum foil, folding it up, folding it over itself, and that's gonna help create a very tight seal. You come to handles, pull it up over itself, squish it. You're basically just squishing it in to make a seal. Your oven is still set at 375 from your croissants. If you let this sit overnight, just preheat your oven to 375. This isn't rocket science. 375, preheat your oven. This is gonna go in for 30 minutes. Then we're gonna take the aluminum foil and parchment off, and we're gonna cook it another 20 minutes. And I'm gonna clean this up in the meantime, and I'll meet you right back here. This is a dessert worthy of your holiday table. Look at that. We've got chocolate, we've got orange, all the flavors of the season, bread pudding, croissants that you made. This is the most impressive dessert you will ever make, I promise. Unless we do croquembouche next year. So I'm gonna dig right into this. We have worked very hard for a few days, and I am dying to see how it's held up. Pink spatula optional. I gotta get into this. I'm so freaking excited. Oh. Y'all, this is incredible. That dark chocolate like cuts through the sweetness. We didn't make the custard overly sweet, so it allows the chocolate to be the sweet item. And as soon as you taste it, you get that orange in the back of your throat, and it's custardy and just luxurious in the bottom, and that top is just super crispy. You guys, you gotta make this. Aren't you glad we made this bread pudding? You guys, I hope that you have the happiest of holidays. We still have 1 episode left, so make sure that you're liking, subscribing, and saving. Make this for your family and friends. Peace on earth, goodwill toward bread pudding. A little bit from my mouth. Happy holidays. I don't know where the cut is.
The red button?
I can't see it, I'm not that tall.
It's okay.
Oh wait, I think I just defocused the background.
You're fine. Just